I've always believed that trust is like a house of cards, delicate, intricate, and built with care over years, but one wrong move, one gust of dishonesty, and the whole thing comes crashing down. My name is Daniel Harper, and for the last 12 years, I've been married to Claire. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her laughter, her auburn hair catching the sunlight like a halo, her green eyes sharp with wit and warmth. We met in college, two literature majors arguing over Dostoevsky in a dimly lit cafe, and from that moment, I knew she was my everything. We built a life together, a cozy craftsman-style house in Portland, two cats named Elliot and Wolf, and a shared dream of opening a bookstore someday. I thought we were unshakable, but life, as I've learned, has a way of testing even the strongest foundations. It was a Tuesday in late September, the kind of crisp autumn day that makes you want to linger outside with a coffee and a good book. I was at the university where I teach creative writing, wrapping up a lecture on unreliable narrators, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Claire. * dinner at 7? Made your favorite lasagna. * I smiled, picturing her in our kitchen, humming to some indie folk playlist as she layered pasta and cheese. Sounds perfect, I replied. Love you. Her response came quickly. Love you too, Dan's simple words, but they warmed me like they always did. The day passed in a blur of grading papers and faculty meetings. By the time I got home, the sky was bruising purple, and the air smelled of rain. Our house glowed from within, the windows casting golden light onto the front lawn. I parked my old Volvo next to Claire's Prius and noticed a third car in the driveway, a sleek black Audi I didn't recognize. My first thought was that it belonged to one of her friends from the art gallery where she worked as a curator. Claire often hosted colleagues for wine and brainstorming sessions about upcoming exhibits. I didn't think much of it. Inside, the house smelled of garlic and tomatoes, and the dining table was set for two. Candles flickering, a bottle of Chianti open and breathing. But Claire wasn't in the kitchen. The lasagna sat cooling on the counter, untouched. I called her name, my voice echoing in the quiet house. No answer. A faint unease stirred in my chest, like a note played slightly off-key. I set my briefcase down and climbed the stairs, figuring she was in her office or maybe taking a quick shower. The hallway was dark, but a sliver of light spilled from beneath our bedroom door. I heard voices, low, muffled, but unmistakably too. One was Claire's, soft and breathy, the other deeper, male, unfamiliar. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was nothing. A friend, a colleague, someone dropping off something for the gallery. But my hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. I didn't knock. I didn't call out again. I just pushed the door open. The world tilted. Claire was on our bed, her blouse unbuttoned, her skirt hiked up, her hair spilling across the pillow. A man I didn't know was with her, his shirt half off, his hands on her waist. They froze, staring at me like deer caught in headlights. Claire's eyes widened, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. The man scrambled back, muttering something incoherent, grabbing his jacket from the floor. Dan? Claire finally gasped, pulling the sheet to her chest. Dan, this isn't. Don't, I said, my voice low, steady, though inside I was fracturing. Don't say it's not what it looks like. I'm not blind. The man, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a jawline that looked like it belonged in a cologne ad, fumbled with his shoes. I should go, he said, avoiding my gaze. Yeah, I said. You should. He slipped past me, his cologne sharp and expensive, and I heard the front door slam moments later. Claire was crying now, her face crumpling as she reached for me. Dan, please let me explain. I stepped back, out of her reach. Explain what, Claire? That you invited some guy into our bed while I was at work? That you've been lying to me for how long? Weeks? Months? It's not like that, she sobbed. It was a mistake. A stupid, awful mistake. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to tear the room apart. But I just stood there, my hands clenched into fists, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Who is he? I asked. She hesitated, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. His name's Ethan. He's a photographer. We met at the gallery. It was just this once, I swear. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. Just this once. You expect me to believe that? It's true, she insisted, her voice breaking. I was lonely, Dan. You're always working late, always buried in your manuscripts or your students' papers. I needed someone to see me. Her words cut deeper than I thought possible. Was this my fault? Had I been so wrapped up in my own world that I'd neglected her? I shook my head, pushing the thought away. No, this wasn't on me. This was her choice. I need to think, I said, turning toward the door. I can't be here right now. Dan, please, she called after me. But I didn't stop. I grabbed my keys and left, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. I drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring through the windshield. My mind was a storm. Anger, hurt, betrayal swirling together. I kept seeing her with him, their tangled limbs, the intimacy of our bed defiled. I pulled into a parking lot near the river and sat there, staring at the water, trying to make sense of it all. The next few days were a haze. I stayed at a cheap motel, ignoring Claire's calls and texts. She sent long, rambling messages, begging for forgiveness, promising it was a one-time thing, swearing she loved me. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Not yet. I went to work, taught my classes, smiled at my students, but it was like moving through a dream. My colleagues noticed something was off, but I brushed them off with vague excuses about stress. On the third day, I started digging. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the need to understand, to quantify the betrayal, but I wanted to know who Ethan was. I logged into Claire's laptop, which she'd left at home, and found her email open. There they were, dozens of messages between her and Ethan Caldwell, the photographer. They started innocently enough, discussions about an exhibit, notes on lighting and composition. But over the last 3 months, the tone had shifted. Flirty banter, late-night conversations, hints of meetings outside the gallery. One email, dated 2 weeks ago, made my blood run cold. Asterisk, I can't stop thinking about you. Meet me at the studio tomorrow. Asterisk, I cross-referenced his name online. Ethan Caldwell was a rising star in Portland's art scene, known for his moody, evocative portraits. His Instagram was full of black and white photos, many of them featuring Claire, her laughing in a cafe, her silhouette against a sunset, her eyes meeting the camera with a look I thought was reserved for me. The captions were cryptic but suggestive. Asterisk muse. Light in the shadows. Asterisk my stomach churned. I found his studio's address on his website, a loft in the Pearl District. Part of me wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. Instead, I kept reading, piecing together the timeline. Claire had been lying to me for at least 3 months, maybe longer. The lasagna, the candles, the love you texts. They were all part of a performance, a way to keep me oblivious while she built something else with him. I didn't go home that night either. I sat in the motel, staring at the peeling wallpaper, my mind racing. I wasn't just hurt, I was angry, furious. Not just at Claire, but at myself for not seeing it, for trusting her so completely. I thought about our life together, the promises we'd made, the plans we'd sketched out over glasses of wine. I thought about the bookstore we wanted to open, the trips we'd planned to Italy and Japan. Had it all been a lie, or had she just stopped caring? By the 5th day, I knew I couldn't keep avoiding her. I drove back to the house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Claire was waiting for me in the living room, her eyes red-rimmed, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She stood when I walked in, her hands twisting together nervously. Dan, she said, her voice small. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. I love you. I've always loved you. I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for the woman I'd married. She was still beautiful, still the Claire I'd fallen for. But there was a crack in the image now, a flaw I couldn't unsee. I need time, I said finally. And I need the truth. All of it. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Anything you want to know. I'll tell you everything. We talked for hours. She admitted to meeting Ethan at a gallery event 4 months ago, how their shared passion for art turned into something more. She swore it had only been physical once, the time I'd caught them, but the emotional affair had been going on longer. She said she'd been drawn to his attention, his intensity, the way he made her feel seen. She kept apologizing, saying she didn't know how it had spiraled so far. I listened, my heart a battlefield of love and rage. I wanted to believe her, to salvage what we had, but I couldn't shake the image of her with him. I couldn't trust her anymore, and that realization was like losing a limb. But as I sat there, something else was taking shape in my mind. Not just pain, but a plan. A way to make her feel the weight of what she'd done, to make Ethan regret ever crossing my path. I didn't know the details yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I was going to take control. That night, as Claire slept uneasily on the couch, I sat at my desk, a notebook open in front of me. I started writing not a story, not a poem, but a list. Names, dates, ideas. Revenge doesn't always mean violence or confrontation. Sometimes it's colder, sharper, more deliberate. I wasn't sure what form it would take, but I knew it would be precise, cruel even. They'd both feel it, and they'd never forget. The days following my confrontation with Claire were like navigating a house where every room had been rearranged. Familiar yet disorienting. I went through the motions. Teaching my classes, grading papers, feeding the cats. But my mind was elsewhere, spinning with the fragments of what I'd learned and the weight of what I was planning. Claire and I were still under the same roof, but it was a fragile coexistence. She tiptoed around me, her eyes pleading for forgiveness, while I kept my distance, my responses clipped and guarded. I hadn't decided if I could ever trust her again, but one thing was certain. I wasn't ready to let her go. Not yet. Not until I'd settled the score. My anger wasn't just for Claire. Ethan Caldwell, with his smug photographer's charm and his black and white portraits of my wife, had become the focal point of my rage. He'd walked into my life, my home, my marriage, and thought he could leave without consequence. I wasn't a violent man, never had been, but violence wasn't the only way to make someone pay. I wanted something that would sting, something that would linger in their minds like a splinter they couldn't dig out. And so, I began to build my plan, piece by meticulous piece. In the quiet hours when Claire thought I was grading papers or reading, I started with Ethan. His life was an open book thanks to the internet. His website boasted a sleek portfolio, upcoming exhibitions, and a bio that painted him as a tortured artist with a knack for capturing the raw essence of humanity. I rolled my eyes at the pretension. His Instagram was a goldmine. Posts about gallery openings, late-night studio sessions, and cryptic captions that screamed self-important. I noticed patterns: his favorite coffee shop, a dive bar he frequented, the gym where he posted sweaty mirror selfies. He wasn't hard to track. Portland's art scene was small, incestuous even, and Ethan was a big fish in a tiny pond. Claire's laptop was another treasure trove. She hadn't changed her passwords, either out of guilt or carelessness, and I wasn't above using that to my advantage. Her emails with Ethan revealed more than just their affair. They showed his ambition, his insecurities, his desperation to be seen as a visionary. He'd sent her drafts of grant proposals, pitches for exhibitions, even a half-finished artist statement. He was chasing a big break, a solo show at a prestigious gallery in Seattle that could catapult him into the national spotlight. The application deadline was in 6 weeks, and he was pouring everything into it. That's when the idea took shape. Ethan's career was his lifeblood, his identity. If I could dismantle that, I could hit him where it hurt most. But I didn't want it to be obvious. No vandalism, no public confrontations. I wanted it to be subtle, surgical, so he'd never see it coming, and never know it was me. Claire would be part of it, too, whether she realized it or not. Her betrayal had started this, and she'd play a role in the consequences. I began by planting seeds. Ethan's world revolved around connections, curators, collectors, gallery owners. I created a burner email account, posing as an anonymous, concerned colleague in the art community. I sent carefully worded messages to key players in Portland's art scene, people I knew from Claire's gallery events. The emails hinted at unprofessional behavior, missed deadlines, questionable ethics in sourcing materials, whispers of plagiarism in his recent work. Nothing too specific, just enough to raise eyebrows. I knew the art world thrived on gossip. A few well-placed doubts could spread like wildfire. Next, I turned to his grant application. Claire had forwarded him feedback on his proposal, gushing about his vision. It made my skin crawl, but it also gave me an edge. I found the application portal for the Seattle Gallery and, using another burner account, submitted a tip to the selection committee. I claimed to be a former collaborator who'd seen Ethan recycle ideas from lesser-known artists, attaching doctored screenshots of his portfolio alongside obscure images I'd found online. They weren't blatant copies, but the similarities were close enough to cast doubt. I knew the committee wouldn't dig too deep. A whiff of scandal was often enough to sink an application. But that was just the beginning. Ethan's studio was his sanctuary, the place where he crafted his precious art. I found its address online and paid a visit one evening, driving past the brick building in the Pearl District. It was a converted warehouse, all exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling windows. I didn't go inside, not yet. Instead, I scoped out the security. A basic alarm system, a keypad lock, no cameras. I wasn't planning to break in, but I wanted options. I started small, leaving anonymous notes taped to his door vague. Unsettling messages like, "We're watching," or asterisk, "You can't hide." Asterisk, I wanted him paranoid, looking over his shoulder, wondering who he'd crossed. Meanwhile, at home, I played the part of the wounded husband. Claire was trying hard to make amends, cooking elaborate dinners, leaving notes on my desk, suggesting couples therapy. I didn't reject her outright. I needed her to think we were salvageable, but I kept her at arm's length. I asked questions about Ethan, probing for details under the guise of understanding her mistake. She was hesitant at first, but guilt made her talkative. She told me about his temper, his obsession with control, how he'd get jealous when she mentioned me. It was useful information, fuel for my fire. One night, over a glass of wine she'd poured to reconnect, I steered the conversation to her work. "You've been spending a lot of time at the gallery," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Any big projects coming up?" She brightened, eager to talk about something safe. "Yeah, we're planning a group show next month. Ethan's submitting a few pieces, but it's competitive. The curator's really picky." I nodded, filing that away. "Sounds stressful for him. You helping him out?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around her glass. "Not really. I mean, I've given him some feedback, but I'm trying to keep things professional now." "Good," I said, meeting her eyes. "You should." She looked away, and I knew she was still in contact with him. Her phone buzzed constantly, and I'd seen his name flash on the screen when she thought I wasn't looking. It stung, but it also hardened my resolve. She wasn't fully mine anymore, but she wasn't his either. She was caught in the middle, and I'd used that. I escalated my plan. Using Claire's email, I sent Ethan a message from her account, careful to mimic her tone. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. Can we meet at your studio tomorrow night? I need to talk." I deleted the sent email and cleared the trash. The next evening, I drove to the Pearl District and parked a block away from Ethan's studio. I watched as he arrived, looking expectant, maybe even hopeful. He waited for an hour, pacing outside, checking his phone. Claire, of course, never showed. I wanted him to feel stood up, to question her commitment, to let doubt creep in. Over the next few weeks, I kept up the pressure. I sent more anonymous tips, this time to collectors who'd bought Ethan's work, suggesting he'd inflated the value of his pieces. I posted on art forums under pseudonyms, questioning the originality of his latest series. I even hired a freelance coder to tweak his website's metadata, making it harder for search engines to find. Each move was small, deniable, but together they were a slow poison, eroding his reputation. Claire noticed something was off. "Ethan's been acting weird," she said one morning, stirring her coffee. "He's paranoid, says people are talking about him. I think he's stressed about the Seattle grant. I shrugged, feigning disinterest. Sounds like he's got enough on his plate without dragging you into it. She nodded, but I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She was still entangled with him, emotionally if not physically. That was fine. It made her vulnerable easier to manipulate. I suggested she invite him to the gallery's group show, to keep things professional. She agreed, thinking it was a step toward normalcy. I knew it would be the perfect stage for the next part of my plan. The night of the group show arrived, a glittering affair in a renovated warehouse. Claire was in her element, schmoozing with collectors and artists, her laugh cutting through the hum of conversation. Ethan was there, his work displayed prominently, a series of oversized portraits including one of Claire. Seeing her face on the wall, larger than life, made my jaw clench. I mingled, playing the supportive husband, but my eyes were on Ethan. He was nervous, fidgeting with his wine glass, glancing at the curator who held the keys to his Seattle dreams. I'd arranged a surprise for him. Earlier that week, I'd contacted a rival photographer, a woman named Lila who'd clashed with Ethan over a stolen client. I posed as a gallery intern, offering her a last-minute spot in the show. She jumped at the chance, submitting a piece that bore an uncanny resemblance to Ethan's signature style. I'd planted the idea, sending her reference images from an obscure blog, knowing she'd take the bait. When the curator unveiled her work, whispers rippled through the crowd. Ethan's face went pale. The similarity wasn't enough for a lawsuit, but it was enough to make people talk. After the show, I overheard him arguing with Lila in a corner, his voice low and furious. Claire was nearby, her expression torn. I approached her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Everything okay?" I asked, loud enough for Ethan to hear. She nodded, leaning into me. "Just drama. Let's go home," I said, guiding her away. Ethan's eyes followed us, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. He was unraveling just as I'd planned. Back home, I lay awake, plotting the final act. Ethan's career was teetering, but I wanted more. I wanted him humiliated, exposed, stripped of the confidence that had let him think he could take what was mine. And Claire, she needed to see the consequences of her choices, to feel the weight of her betrayal. The group show had been a warm-up. The real revenge was coming, and it would be devastating. The weeks after the gallery show felt like the calm before a storm I'd summoned. Claire was quieter, her attempts at reconciliation more tentative, as if she sensed the ground shifting beneath us. I played along, offering small gestures of warmth, a shared coffee in the morning, a half-smile when she spoke. But my heart was elsewhere, consumed by the final phase of my plan. Ethan Caldwell had become a ghost in my mind. Not a man, but a symbol of everything Claire had broken. His career was fraying, his confidence shaken, but it wasn't enough. I wanted him ruined, and I wanted Claire to witness it, not just as a bystander, but as a participant in her own undoing. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't about destruction alone. It was about precision, about crafting a moment so sharp it would cut them both for years. I'd been meticulous so far, working in the shadows with burner accounts and whispered rumors. But the final act required something bolder, something that would expose Ethan's vulnerabilities and Claire's complicity in a way neither could escape. The Seattle grant was the key. It was his golden ticket, the culmination of his ambitions, and the application deadline was days away. I knew from Claire's emails that he'd poured everything into it. New work, a polished proposal, even a video statement he'd filmed in his studio. If I could sabotage that, I could crush his dreams. And if I could make Claire the instrument of that sabotage, the betrayal would come full circle. I started by deepening the rift between them. Using Claire's email again, I sent Ethan a message, mimicking her voice. *Ethan, I can't do this anymore. You're too intense, too controlling. I need space. Please don't contact me. I deleted the evidence and waited. The next day, Claire came home from the gallery looking rattled. "Ethan called me today," she said, setting her bag down with a sigh. "He was upset," said I'm pulling away. "I don't know what I did." I raised an eyebrow, keeping my tone neutral. Maybe he's reading too much into things. You said you're keeping it professional, right? She nodded, but her eyes darted away. Yeah, it's just... He sounded hurt. I hid my satisfaction. Ethan was already on edge, and now he'd question her loyalty. Perfect. I needed him distracted, emotional, sloppy. I needed Claire conflicted, caught between guilt and her lingering feelings for him. It would make what came next easier. My next move was riskier. Ethan's studio was his lifeline, where he stored his work, his equipment, his precious grant materials. I'd scouted it before, noting the keypad lock and lack of cameras. I wasn't a criminal, far from it, but desperation breeds ingenuity. I'd overheard Claire mention Ethan's birthday during one of our tense conversations, a detail she'd let slip when describing a gallery event. It was a long shot, but I drove to his studio late one night, parked a block away, and approached the door. My heart pounded as I punched in the date, month, day, year. The lock clicked open. I froze, half expecting an alarm, but the building stayed silent. Inside, the studio was a shrine to Ethan's ego. Prints hung on the walls, tripods and lights cluttered the corners, and a desk held his laptop and stacks of portfolios. I didn't touch the computer, too traceable, but I found a USB drive labeled Seattle Grant. My pulse quickened. I slipped it into my pocket, replaced it with a blank one I'd brought, and left as quickly as I'd come. The whole thing took 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Back at the motel where I'd been crashing on and off, I plugged the drive into my old laptop. It was a goldmine, high-resolution images of his new series, his proposal document, and the video statement. The video showed Ethan in his studio, speaking passionately about authenticity and vulnerability. I scoffed at the irony. The proposal was polished, compelling even, but I knew how to twist it. I spent hours editing the document, inserting subtle errors, misattributed quotes, fabricated statistics, a paragraph that echoed another artist's work too closely. I tweaked the video, adding faint distortions to the audio, making him sound slightly unhinged. Nothing blatant, just enough to make the committee question his professionalism. But the real coup was the images. Ethan's new series featured Claire prominently, her face and form woven into moody, abstract compositions. I couldn't destroy them, they were backups, and he'd likely have others, but I could use them. I created a fake email account posing as a disgruntled assistant and sent the images to a gossip blog that covered Portland's art scene. The email claimed Ethan was exploiting his muse without her consent, using her likeness to boost his career. I attached a doctored contract, forged with Claire's signature, suggesting she'd been coerced. The blog ate it up, publishing a scathing post titled Ethics in Art. Photographer crosses the line? It spread quickly, amplified by the rumors I'd already planted. The fallout was immediate. Claire came home the next day, her face pale. "Dan, have you seen this?" she asked, holding up her phone. The blog post stared back at me. Claire's portrait splashed across the screen. "Ethan's in trouble. People are saying he used my photos without permission. I never signed anything like that." I feigned concern. "That's serious. Did he ever ask you about those photos?" She shook her head, her voice trembling. "Not like that. I mean, I posed for him, but it was supposed to be private, just for his portfolio. This is humiliating." I put a hand on her shoulder, my touch calculated. "You should talk to him. Set the record straight. Maybe go to the gallery. Make it clear you didn't consent." She nodded, tears welling up. I didn't realize he'd do something like this. I knew she'd confront him. I counted on it. The confrontation would deepen the wedge between them, and it would draw her into the chaos I'd created. That night, she called Ethan, and I listened from the hallway as their conversation escalated into a tense exchange. She accused him of betraying her trust. He denied everything, his voice crackling through the speaker with frustration. By the end, she was sobbing and he was pleading. I felt no pity, only a grim sense of progress. The Seattle Grant was the final blow. I mailed the tampered USB drive back to Ethan anonymously, with a note. Asterisk found this. Good luck. Asterisk I knew he'd use it, assuming it was his original. The committee would see the flawed proposal, the distorted video, and the images now tainted by scandal. His application was dead on arrival. To ensure it, I sent one last anonymous tip to the committee, linking them to the blog post and suggesting they investigate Ethan's ethics. It was overkill, but I wasn't taking chances. The night it all came crashing down was a cold one. Rain sluicing down the windows of our house. Claire was at the gallery, working late to manage the fallout from the scandal. I sat at my desk, checking my burner email, when I saw it. A post on X from a Seattle art critic. Disappointing news. Ethan Caldwell's grant application withdrawn amid controversy. A lesson in hubris. I leaned back, a dark satisfaction settling over me. He was finished. Claire came home after midnight, her coat dripping, her eyes hollow. "It's over," she said, slumping onto the couch. "Ethan's career is tanking. The gallery dropped him, and he's blaming me. He thinks I leaked those photos." I sat beside her, my face a mask. "What did you tell him?" "That I had no idea how it happened," she said, her voice breaking. "But he didn't believe me. And now everyone's looking at me like I'm some prop in his drama." I nodded, my hand resting on hers. "You didn't deserve this, Claire. But maybe it's better this way. A clean break." She looked at me, searching for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or absolution. "Dan, do you think we can ever fix us?" I paused, letting the moment stretch. "I don't know," I said finally. "But I'm here now." It was enough to keep her close, to keep her tethered. The truth was, I hadn't decided what to do about us. Her betrayal was a scar, but so was my revenge. I'd dismantled Ethan, used her to do it, and she'd never know the extent of my hand in it. That was the cruelest part. Not just the pain, but the secrecy, the way she'd carry the weight of her choices without ever understanding the full story. In the days that followed, Ethan faded from the art scene. His Instagram went silent, his studio lease was canceled, and whispers followed him like shadows. Claire threw herself into her work, trying to rebuild her reputation, but the scandal clung to her, a quiet reminder of her indiscretions. Our marriage limped on, neither healed nor broken, suspended in a fragile truce. I went back to teaching, to my students and their stories, but I kept the burner phone, the forged documents, the memories of those late-night drives. They were my insurance, proof of what I was capable of if pushed too far.